China is one of the most powerful nations in the world, an international superpower that's threatened to topple the United States of America for years now, and one man has all this power under the firm grip of an iron fist. In this video, we'll be discussing the hurdles that Chinese General Secretary Xi Jinping has had to overcome, and how all his struggles have led him to the top of the food chain. Keep watching, because you might just catch a glimpse of his endgame. But to fully understand just how powerful Xi Jinping is, we first have to understand how the Chinese government works. Communist Community. The Chinese Communist Party, or CCP, was established in 1921 by Mao Zedong, and if that name doesn't trigger your fight or flight, then it probably should. Communism at the time was a wildly popular political ideology that centered around one thing: to seize the means of production.
Okay, finito.
Communism operated on the idea that the state should call all the shots and no major companies should be privatized. The state being in charge of production and distribution means that every citizen gets their fair share and no one would go hungry. Now this seems like a good idea, but you'll realize that everything falls apart if the state is centered around a person like Mao Zedong, who caused the economic death of China and the literal death of millions of Chinamen. Mao Zedong was a fierce dictator that abused the communist system to his benefit. A communist party is often made up of a general committee of officials that discuss national agendas, big and small. But above the general committee stands the political bureau, or simply called a Politburo. The Politburo is made up of China's 7 most powerful and influential people in the country. That's not where the power pyramid ends. Standing at the very tip top of this communist pyramid is the General Secretary, the president and leader of the entire political body and country. This is the position that Mao Zedong found himself in years ago, and this is the same position that Xi Jinping finds himself now. But their connection doesn't end there. In fact, Xi Jinping's relation to Mao Zedong goes way back to his early childhood. Birth of a leader. Xi Jinping was born on June 15, 1953, a year in which most Chinese mainlanders would recognize as the year where China was slowly collapsing in on itself. Internal conflicts and protests plagued everyday life, and the only people who were comfortable were Mao Zedong's cronies. If you weren't close to Mao Zedong, then odds are you probably weren't living the best life. Thankfully for Xi Jinping, he was the son of Mao Zedong's cronies. Xi Jinping lived comfortably in his early years, but everything changed when he was 15 years old. His father, one of Mao's former cronies, had been shamed and killed for going against Mao Zedong's ideology. Because of his father's sins, Xi Jinping was exiled off to a rural province, forced to slave away while literally living in a cave. But Mao Zedong's empire eventually came to an end, and so did he. Mao Zedong died in 1976, leaving China to lick its wounds and reform the government in newer and more capable hands. The country was now in a revolutionary state, for better or for worse, and as Mao Zedong's reign ended, so did Xi Jinping's exile. Instead of taking up arms against the very republic that caused years of forced labor, he chose a more surprising route. Xi Jinping returned to Beijing, and he joined the Chinese Communist Party with the hopes of gaining a chair among the powerful. To the top. Xi Jinping, undeterred by the horrors that Mao Zedong brought onto the people of China, now wanted to be in power. It was clear to him that being in power meant that you could survive whatever the world threw at you, and he wasn't the only one vying for the top spot. But instead of pushing against the dense crowd and competition of Beijing, Xi Jinping decided to rally support elsewhere. Xi Jinping left Beijing to chase after small provincial level positions to slowly build his name. China is the largest country in the world, and if you wanted the entire country to know your name, television ads wouldn't cut it. So he began his journey, traveling to rural provinces all around China where there was no other big name to be in competition with. Xi Jinping started collecting his groups of supporters one province at a time, and among them were powerful friends in the right places. His plan finally came to fruition when he was elected as party secretary in Shanghai, a state that was worse for wear following a few political scandals. Xi Jinping's efforts as the party secretary turned things around for Shanghai, and this was what eventually landed him back in the city of Beijing, now with thousands of followers in his corner. This notoriety amongst his peers granted him the highest position he's earned yet, a seat with the Politburo between 2007 to 2012. And when the general secretary of his time eventually stepped down, Xi Jinping was there ready to inherit the throne. All hail! As someone who's experienced the hardships of living life under the rule of a power-hungry dictator like Mao Zedong, you would assume that Xi Jinping would steer clear of that type of dictatorship. And you would be wrong. Instead, Xi Jinping takes inspiration from Mao Zedong. thinking that for the country of China to prosper, everyone should be rallying under a single leader. Worked so well the last time, right? As soon as Xi Jinping gained everyone's trust and earned the top spot as general secretary, he started making drastic changes to prolong his term on top. First thing on his to-do list was sack the other people in power. One by one, powerful officials were being removed from their seats under different criminal allegations. From an outside perspective, it looked like Xi Jinping was just doing his duty as a trustworthy general secretary, weeding out the corrupt officials and exposing them for the criminals that they are. But all these alleged criminals all actually have one thing in common. They all oppose Xi Jinping's reforms. To fill the empty seats that these officials left, Xi Jinping elected many of his own cronies. Sound familiar? That's because this is the exact tactic that Mao Zedong employed during his reign. Xi Jinping placing his own puppets in powerful positions meant that Xi Jinping now controlled every arm of the largest country in the world, and that included the Chinese military. At the start of Xi Jinping's second term in 2017 to 2022, he would also work on replacing the Politburo members with more of his cronies, assuring that his word was scripture. Xi Jinping now had the power to enact any policy that he could think of, and in true Mao Zedong 2.0 action, he made sure his policies let him remain in power. Staying on top, Xi Jinping had finally clawed his way to the top, and he had to make sure he stayed on top. Throughout the Chinese Communist Party's history, there have been three major resolutions that warped what the CCP believed in. The first resolution was, of course, Maoism. Maoism basically meant that Mao's words were gospel, and they were followed to a T. The second resolution established that Mao's reign was meant to disperse the power that Mao had collected, opting for leadership by committee rather than just a single person. The third and most recent resolution, enacted by Xi Jinping in 2021, was basically a rerun of what Mao Zedong had enacted. The third resolution stated that Xi Jinping had the final word on what was right for China, no matter how wrong he was. But as scary as this sounds, China actually improved. Rallying behind Xi Jinping's vision of the Chinese dream of national rejuvenation, China's GDP grew, everyone's average income grew, and so did the military's budget. Suddenly, China wasn't just the biggest country in the world, but the up-and-coming superpower meant to rival America itself. While that is quite an impressive feat for Xi Jinping, it wasn't without its red flags. China began expanding aggressively into foreign territory, such as the South China Sea, Taiwan, and Tibet. We all know how the conflict with Hong Kong went. Internal oppression of minority groups, intense censorship, and constant surveillance meant that China was trading off the freedom of its citizen for more power. If you had anything bad to say about his reign,
what did you say?
Whether you be an elite businessman or a lowly farmer, you know that Xi Jinping has his eyes on you.
What did you say to me?
All this internal turmoil led to the shaky decline of China's economy, a decline that continues to this day. But as 2022 rolled in, Xi Jinping was still in power, backed by his cronies who now made up the entire Politburo. Only time will tell if Xi Jinping's rule would continue to be the dream run that he had wanted, or if it would lead to ruin like the leader he's emulated this entire time.